Welcome, Atlassian Head of Product, Enterprise Strategy and Planning, Natalia Baryshnikova.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Team 24. Hope everybody's having a good time. And welcome to the Enterprise Agility at Scale session. Awesome. Well, I know it's morning, but you had some good laugh with Ted Lasso. And I want to change the tone a little bit. I want to ask you some hard questions to begin with. The first question that I would like to ask all of the leaders in the room, and also all of the leaders that are listening to this session online, is do you have the full picture of how the strategy in your organization connects to the work that your teams are doing? And are you confident that your teams are doing the right work? And most importantly, do you feel like you have the data that you, as a leader, need to make decisions? Gloomy, right? Well, if you answered no to some of those questions, you are not alone, because it is overwhelming. And if one thing that we leaders in this room can agree on, whether you are in the room or watching us online, is that the leadership struggle is real. It hits you like a wall of bricks. And now I'm switching the tone back, because I want to talk to you about a company that knows a thing or two about the bricks. Let's talk about a history of Lego. There's a book by David Robertson called Brick by Brick that pictures how Lego was on the brink of bankruptcy, and yet they were able to come back swinging. So what happened? In roughly 1988, Lego lost its patent of interlocking blocks. As a result, cheap copycats flooded the market, and Lego was just too complacent to do anything about it. Well, in the 90s, they started to catch up, and they decided to catch up through unleashing innovation everywhere. What that meant, they just went and started innovating without any framework or without constraints. They opened a number of Lego parks that were losing money, that did not connect with the audience, really. They started doing Lego products for random audiences, such as teenagers. Imagine coming of age with Lego. Sounds strange, right? But yeah, that's what happened. And so as a result, in 2003, they were on the brink of bankruptcy. And yet they survived somehow. And today we know Lego as this iconic toy brand that's so much more than just the bricks. If you read the book, you don't have to, because I'm going to tell you the key points. But the key points really are about Lego reinventing their focus, being absolutely relentless about focusing on what's core for them, which they called system of play. You know, some companies have system of work, some companies have system of play. But also, they evolved not just their strategy and the focus. They focused on how their teams did the work. For example, they set standards and constraints about innovation. And for any new project, for any innovation that they still wanted to encourage, they set constraints around how much revenue projection and what was the potential user growth that they wanted to experience before a project got approved. It may sound boring and even restrictive, but that's exactly how they were able to reinvent themselves and to become that iconic toy brand company that we know them as today. And 100 years from now, I believe that we still will. So Lego's experience and Lego story, by the way, highly encourage you to read the book, really pinpoints that you need to evolve your ways of working and your strategy at once. I know that you came to the Enterprise Agility session, but today I want to talk to you about how we need to take Enterprise Agility beyond agility. We believe that a Lego story tells us why it's so important to think about evolving your strategy and your planning at once, the ways you work and how you set and manage strategy. And Atlassian is here to help you with that. So I'm going to talk about 3 ways of how Atlassian can help you, the leaders, and your organizations to get better at enterprise strategy and planning. Well, let's dive in. First, we're going to talk about how organizations need to connect the dots and how we're going to help with that. Why is it so important? Because it's never been more important to connect all of those disjointed data points that organizations have as a result of silos. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. In addition to this, you cannot just optimize for the leadership teams and connecting the dots, because teams need to be empowered to do their work. So empowering teams is another area that Atlassian is passionate about, and we're going to be very specific about what we in Enterprise Agility are doing about it. And lastly, again, leaders are here to make decisions. So how do we help you to make better decisions faster? Because now it's more pressure, it's more important than ever to make better decisions faster. So let's talk about connecting the dots. I'll start with a little bit of factoid. There was a recent study of Harvard Business Review that unveiled what is the key frustration of CEOs of the organizations. Anybody knows what that was? Well, it was about not being able to make their leadership teams work together. It's humans, right? We talk a lot about technology, but the part of humanity is what sometimes is so challenging about making technology work. And Atlassian's own research actually confirms and echoes this sentiment. So we had a study with Forrester, and we discovered that 57% of the organizations lack shared context and understanding between teams. And that's a problem. Silos continue to be a significant barrier to information flow up and down the organization, across the organization, and that slows down work. That slows down how quickly you can achieve your strategy, even if you have it perfectly set up. It means wasted time. It means wasted money. And who is to blame for this situation? Well, it's us, the leaders. Whether it's fair or not, only we can break those organizational silos, and it has to start at the top. So we have to validate and communicate the why behind the work before we ask the teams to do it. And we at Atlassian understand this. Our desire to help the leaders can be seen through some of our recent launches in the Jira Align product. So let's talk about one of them. Recently, our Objective and Key Results Hub in Jira Align was launched to help organizations to align teams and leaders to be on the same page about the objectives of work. And whether you're doing your work in Jira Cloud or Jira Data Center or Azure DevOps, you can still connect all that work to specific objectives that matter to your organizations in the OKR Hub. And it's been a real joy to see how our customers are using those capabilities. For example, Macquarie Banking and Financial Services Group, the customer who's been pioneering using OKRs in their organization, Macquarie Banking and Financial Services Group aspires to be #1 digital bank in Australia. They have a very, very, very ambitious goal. And OKRs are just a big part of that, because it's impossible to become #1 without making sure that you have a system of alignment between what your teams are doing and the strategy that the leadership sets. So I hope that you actually get a chance to listen to the Macquarie session today at 2 p.m. They're going to speak about their OKR approach and strategy in a theater session. But what I want to call out is how ambitious and important that is for them, and why it is so important to keep that ambition. Because OKRs are a fairly simple framework. Not everybody would agree with that, but when we think about an organizational strategy, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's just one of the bricks in the house. But setting and managing strategy is hard, because in addition to OKRs, you have so much more to figure out. You have to figure out your budget, you have to figure out your headcount, besides figuring out how the goals connect to work. And performing against set strategic outcomes is yet another challenge that organizations struggle with. And again, it's a painful understanding that sometimes is a wake-up call for the organizations. And the question is whether you're going to wake up from a dream or from a nightmare. Which one will it be? Well, the answer to that question is often related to a very, very specific, special group of people in the organization. And on our journey with our customers, looking into what are some of the best practices to run strategy and achieve strategic goals as an organization, we have come to recognize a critical role. It's a role that are often unsung heroes of organizations, of making your strategy dreams come true. This role is program leaders and operations leaders. So you may know them as program leaders, you may know them as business leaders, operations leaders, chiefs of staff, strategy and business operations. They have many names, but fundamentally, it is the role that tackles the messiest part of the problem of making strategy come to life. So please join me in giving a huge shout out to these heroes, and we believe that they shall no longer be unsung, because we're going to write a song about them, and we're going to sing it. Maybe not a double secret album, but still it's going to be a hit. Speaking of which, I want you to meet someone. I want you to meet Olivia, the protagonist of our story. Olivia is a program leader, and she works for Prosperify Investments. And today, she's working on her absolutely favorite thing, the organization's annual planning cycle. Raise your hand if you love a planning cycle. No hands. Understandable. Well, remember that we talked about that organizations need to be ambitious in order to crack the strategy code. Well, Olivia is very, very ambitious because her job is fundamental to one of the key organizational goals and paving the way to making it happen. So she manages programs that are responsible for the ambitious goal of increasing monthly recurring revenue of her organization by 27% year over year. So program leaders in the audience, you know that it usually takes a lot of time, right? So to get the strategic priorities into the system, discussed and approved, discussed and challenged and revised and followed up on, it is very, very challenging. And Olivia, when she thinks about her hopes and dreams, her biggest hope is this, that this time the annual planning takes less than the entire year. Because let's be honest, they call it annual planning because it takes a year to plan. But good news, her dreams this time can come true with the new Jira Align capabilities. We're going to make Olivia and other program and operations leaders' lives and jobs much easier for our new set of capabilities, where they can easily align teams, work, and money against desired business outcomes. So the first thing that Olivia needs to do is set her strategic priorities. And oftentimes, her strategic priorities live in, spreadsheets, but oftentimes they already exist in various tools, often just jointed. And the first thing that Olivia can do is to leverage this fact. She can take existing tools where her strategic priorities already are taking place, and she can connect all of those tools into the new Jira Align capabilities to define what we call focus areas. And focus areas are a very important part of setting up your strategy because they allow you to tie together your goals, your teams, your money associated with strategic bodies of work, and then make them flexible enough. A focus area can be, for example, a product. It can be a collection of services. But in Olivia's case, she works for a financial organization, so she sets it up as portfolios. Again, it's a fundamental way for an organization to represent your strategic priorities. Once Olivia set this up, she can then roll up all the work that her teams are doing, regardless of the tools where this work is happening, into the system, so that she can see an immediate progress that's happening across the organization on making the monthly recurring revenue happen and get it increased by, I shall remind you, 27%. So as Olivia works on this, she really needs to connect to all tools, not just the Atlassian tools, and now she's able to do this. In the past, Olivia would have to spend days and days putting together spreadsheets, talking to dozens of people, and getting it all in the system. But now, those days are gone. Now, Olivia can get work, people, and money data from Atlassian and other tools all together in just a few clicks. And even better, she can now see how it connects immediately. So once she has done that, Olivia needs to understand what's going on in terms of representation of her strategic goals and how that ties to all the work that is happening and what can be on track, off track, what's the current status of the progress. Again, in the past, she would spend days and days trying to figure it out, but now with the flexibility of the view that we present in the Jira Align tooling, she can take those strategic priorities and slice them according to her preferences. She can ask, what is my goal and what is all the work that is happening to help my organization achieve that goal, and where do I see problems, where do I see challenges and what's going well. And we have an answer for Olivia. So the view makes it incredibly easy for her to connect the dots. Achievement unlocked. Why is Atlassian uniquely positioned to help Olivia and you, the leaders, with this? Well, that is because we've spent over 20 years relentlessly and passionately thinking about the teams and how they do their best work. So we have the breadth and depth of the knowledge and the data needed to make this understanding. Because we also believe in the open toolchain approach, right? We love you for loving the Atlassian tools, but we believe that teams, again, need to be empowered and be able to do work in whichever tools they prefer. So that's why we believe in rolling up all work, and we're going to help Olivia make that happen as well. And lastly, because as you've hopefully heard at this conference before, we're dedicated to conceptual consistency, and we're dedicated to the unified data model. In other words, we're dedicated to the Atlassian system of work. And you've heard this in our founder keynote, and hopefully some of you got a chance to attend our system of work keynote as well. But Atlassian's approach to what the system of work is goes beyond just the tooling. We believe it's an approach of how teams should work together to improve collaboration and to truly unleash their potential. So that is easier said than done, and system of work is something that many organizations actually try to figure out on their own. And because of this, I would like to introduce someone else who is not Olivia. Let's hear from someone who has spent a lot of time thinking about their organization's system of work and share some learnings about it. Let's hear from Josh Brose, SVP at Fidelity Investment.
Hi there.
Josh, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We talked a lot about organizational silos, and I know that you're passionate about helping Fidelity to solve this problem. So maybe you can start with you sharing about what role do you play and what role does your team play in making things happen at Fidelity?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm in the enterprise technology organization at Fidelity, and I lead a product area that is responsible for portfolio management solutions, right? So we obviously are looking at, or we have ownership internally for all the Atlassian products. We're big Jira Align users. But we've also built a handful of homegrown applications for workforce management, and one that we call transparency, right? Which gets to really what we're after, our goals, right? So we are an organization that's super focused on trying to help basically improve the effectiveness and efficiency of teams, making sure we are delivering the most value for the enterprise. And we do that by trying to reduce friction, but ultimately help leaders try to make better decisions, right? And so that's really what we're focused on. So yeah, I mean, that's my world.
Nice. Well, Fidelity is such a massive institution, and I, for one, am a heavy user of Fidelity products. And you know this joke about millennials who check their financial tools every morning. I'm definitely one of them. But you have so much more going on than that, and Fidelity is a massive organization. So I believe that the problem of organizational silos and how to continuously overcome them is something that you spend a lot of time about thinking.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more. How do you approach this at Fidelity?
Yeah, so maybe even a little more context. So we have about 3,000 teams in this model, in our agile organization, right? So it's a really large organization that's operating in this agile way of working. And you know, all those are across multiple business units, right? And so it's a big challenge for us on how we get keep everyone aligned and keep everyone working on the right things. And it is something that we do struggle with, right? And so early on, so if I go back in my history, before I was in this role, I was leading agile transformations for first our enterprise technology organization, and before that our workplace investing. But before that, when I got into, I was exposed to this agile world probably 2016 or so. And I was with a smaller group going through this transformation, and we were one of the early adopters, and so a lot of people were coming to me for advice. How did you do this? And what they inevitably would ask me about is, how do I go from one team to multiple teams aligning around a body of work? We really struggle with that. And my answer was always, just talk, right? You don't have to overthink this. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Just talk. And so the same thing applies now, right? So as we have scaled up from a handful of Scrum teams all the way up to 3,000, right? It's still about talking, right? We don't mandate a specific scaling pattern. Most people do Scrum at scale, but that's all it is, right? If you have a body of work that cuts across multiple groups, get a meta Scrum, right? Have a conversation. Make sure it happens often on a recurring basis, but just talk, right? Align on what you're trying to get after. Focus on removing impediments, but it comes down to just valuable conversations. That's key.
So valuable, I think, is a key word in having a conversation, right? Because yes, talking is something that doesn't happen often enough, and absolutely should happen more often, like you're saying. But how do you make sure that those conversations are actually meaningful, or how do you make sure that they continuously get better? What drives those better conversations in the organization?
Visibility into the data is key, right? One of the homegrown apps that I talked about, it's called transparency, right? It's transparency for a reason. We're trying to make the data available for people, democratize the information for leaders, for everyone, so they have the information that they need at their fingertips to help drive these conversations. And so, it could be as simple as, just making sure that the data that they're putting in all these different tools is available, risks, dependencies, just anything. It could also be information about that we can determine, like flow metric type information, throughput, velocity, predictability, all that kind of stuff. But really what we're focused on is trying to bring out insights, things that may not be super obvious to them, right? Opportunities for them to reprioritize their work, right? As simple as you're spending all your money on the lowest priority item, right? Put that in front of them so they realize, oh, I could actually make a decision here to optimize my portfolio so that we are truly delivering the most value. It sounds obvious, but it's not always easy to see that. And so we try to bring that out. But yeah, that's really been key for us.
That makes sense. Visibility is so important. And I like how you said that sometimes it's not easy to get this visibility across, but also visibility has consequences for the way teams work, the way things change. So do you see that this visibility and sharing the data actually result in, you challenging yourselves and changing the goals, or rethinking whether you picked the right goal? So what are the strategic repercussions of having visibility? Maybe some examples of that.
Yeah. I'll be a little vulnerable with this one, right? So if I go back about a year ago, we were it was focused on the same things I've been talking about. But we were very focused in this transparency app that I'm talking about on building solutions for our executives, right? The most senior executives, the L0, L1, L2 level of the organization. And the hard truth, which you may not love to hear it, is they will never use the tools that we are putting out there. Like, they just won't.
Damn. Wow, Josh.
I know,
okay.
I'm sorry. But it's a hard truth. And so we were building the solutions for them, but we were building for the wrong people, right? We needed to focus on the people that were providing these curated views of information for conversations with the executives. We needed to focus on that group. And so we were not doing that. So we saw that in the data, right? Now, when we look at our performance, like all the information I talked about, we look great, right? We deliver. We're delivering frequently. We deliver, consistently. We're getting more efficient, more effective all the time. But you look at our usage stats, it was not great. Our NPS was abysmal, right? And so that forced us to make a hard pivot, and we did that. And fast forward, our NPS score is up 60 points, which tells you not that it's great today. It is very good, but it was really bad a year ago. And our usage stats were through the roof, right? So we had to look at the data and really challenge ourselves. So not easy, but we had to do it.
Well, not everybody likes to challenge themselves as well, especially if it's someone else who's challenging you to challenge yourself. So it's always very hard to have those conversations with teams, and change management is such an integral part of making a substantial progress, but it's just so hard. What's your secret recipe for that?
Yeah, I mean, not to overuse the term, but first, transparency and empathy is for me what it comes down to. So when I say transparency, I'm more talking about how we communicate with the organization in terms of, where are we going, and most importantly, why. But also talking about where we are today and how we're doing, and being very transparent about what we're struggling with or what we're trying to address, and then also talking about where we've been, right? Celebrating what we've done well, talking about what we haven't done well and how we're trying to improve. So that transparency really builds trust with the organization. But then empathy, it's really important to listen to people. And so what we're doing right now is ultimately a transformation, right? Yes, we're building solutions. Yes, we're supporting products, but we're trying to transform the organization. And before that, I was doing these agile transformation, which is obviously very literally transformation, but people are going through tons of change. And it sometimes gets really hard because people are just always pushing back and challenging you, and they're like, I don't want to change. And so you got to listen to them and try to understand what's behind that. How do you help them? Show that you're listening and just try to address their concerns. You may not be able to do everything, but help them understand why and give them context. And so that transparency and empathy is just critical.
Yeah, I love the empathy part of this. And you're right, winning hearts and minds of teams are so challenging, and yet without it, you cannot get anything done. So, Josh, thank you for the vulnerability, some hard truths we didn't know we needed to hear, but we did. Yeah. Thank you. Please give it up for Josh. Josh Rose, Fidelity Investment.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right. Well, that was inspiring and painful. And I think it's a perfect segue to our next topic. Because without empowering teams to deliver, nothing is going to happen. If we set up the strategy and we have our ambitions and we have our dreams, nothing is going to happen until we empower teams to deliver. So we talked about system of work. Let's talk a little bit more about how exactly the system of work is going to help with that. And to do that, we'll talk about what is at the heart of our system of work. As you've heard in our system of work session, it is the teamwork foundations that we see a set of basic needs that every single team has, regardless of who they are. And once those foundations have been met, only then you can have specialized teams to do work that is related to their specific purview and area of expertise. For example, product and development teams can discover and build new products or software. And then IT and service teams can support and manage services, can support customers and better deliver value through the services. And then leadership teams can actually tie strategy to execution and make better decisions. So it sounds wonderful, right? And very simple, but there is something else standing in the way. It's the dark side of empowering the teams to use the tools they like. Because it's the growing number of tools that makes the organization suffer and makes everything more complicated. According to Okta, in their 2024, the latest study, the average number of apps large organizations use is 231. It's a 10% growth year over year. And guess what? I think come 2025, this number will keep growing. And who suffers the most from this problem? That's right, it's the leaders. But we believe that this problem can and should be solved. We believe that every leader can have the visibility that they need. And common purposes, common language, and common cadences is what helps the team to be on the same page regardless of the tools that they use. And for that reason as well, we consider Jira Align the roof of the house of the system of work. Because every house needs a roof, even the Lego houses. Jira Align, in its role in the Atlassian system of work, helps you bring critical top-down alignment and complement the bottom-up approach you're taking to empower your teams. So I want to talk about how exactly Jira Align is going to help you with that. Well, first, let's discuss the philosophy behind some of the Jira Align's recent launches and what we're planning next. And first, we need to think about what are the unique needs of leaders, right? So as we start thinking about our strategic decision-making and empowering teams to contribute data to make that happen, we really need to think about how do we empower teams to deliver. So the first thing I would like to talk about is the backlog. What makes Jira Align backlog so different? It is the span. Because when we say teams, it doesn't mean that it's a team that is united by their organizational structure, right? Most often, strategic projects, the projects that really move the needle within an organization, happen across teams. And Jira Align Backlog allows you to see work happening on strategic initiatives across different portfolios, across different tools, across the organization. And we're making that easier by enhancing the Jira Align Backlog performance, by adding more capabilities that allow you, the teams doing the work, and you, the leaders, consuming the data from the work being done by the teams to create more value. Teams will have a better time editing things in the backlog, having things that allow them to manage columns with, more filtering that's going to be persistent, and just a lot more to make backlog used for strategic purposes much more usable and powerful. And we're not going to stop on backlog. So in our backlog ourselves, the next thing that we're going to work on is Jira Align roadmaps. Specifically, we've listened to the customers, and we're going to improve and enhance our milestone experience. Because we want you to reflect all the work that goes into launching something. We want you to have a clear visibility over progress that the teams are making as they are keen to deliver against their strategic priorities. So you will be able to create not only a milestone experience, but also set custom statuses and track things along the way, because we know how important it is on the enterprise journey. And we know that in order to truly comprehend and get the data necessary for leadership out of what teams are working on, you need all of that complexity to be simplified and presented in a simple way. So speaking of roadmaps, we also will improve our connections to Jira to help you sync the roadmaps between various Atlassian tools. And that kind of brings me to an elephant in the room, because Atlassian has a lot of roadmaps, right? Yes, we do. So what are those roadmaps? How are they different? Let's demystify this a little bit. So in Jira Align, roadmaps are tailored to enterprise needs. They're really about showing you things across programs, across products, across portfolios, so that you can have a strategic view of a plan over time. In Jira Product Discovery, it is built for product managers to create, share, and improve their roadmaps, the product roadmaps. And in Jira, roadmaps are much more tailored to having a program level or cross-program level capabilities that is purpose-built for teams delivering the work. They have a lot more capabilities that are necessary for the teams to feel confident about the work they're doing, but they are too granular for the leaders. So we have different tools in the system of work to address all of those levels of needs, and that is why you will see different types of roadmaps across the Atlassian tools. So in addition to road mapping and backlog, so the things that all the teams need, whether they're working on something that's contained within their business unit or maybe across the organization, we also have rolled out things that enterprises need to better plan their work. One example is our forecast by feature capability that allows teams to know roughly how much time it's going to take them to complete something so that they can better plan their work. And this recent rollout has been a joy to see, again, how our customers are using it. So KeyBank, one of the biggest bank-based financial services companies in the United States, started using forecasts in Jira Align, and they absolutely loved it. So KeyBank, I don't know if you're here in the audience, but shout out to you. Thank you for helping us shape this functionality. And besides forecasting, as we were exploring forecasting with various customers, we realized that we need a lot more. We cannot stop on just forecasting, so that's why we have shifted into building an entire capacity module, which allowed a lot of our strategic customers to take that planning that used to happen outside of pretty much any tooling in spreadsheets and put it into Jira Align. That's very exciting, and we're hoping to invest more into those enterprise-grade capabilities. And speaking of enterprise capabilities, another big win for our customers lately has been our investment into analytics and enterprise insights, because we all need what? Data. So the recent launch of enterprise insights and Atlassian Analytics has been a big win for many organizations that were trying to create visibility and ease of dashboarding for addressing things like flow metrics or realizing if there are any common patterns for bottlenecks across the delivery of different teams across the organization. And my personal favorite thing about Atlassian Analytics and Enterprise Insights is how easy it is to share the data from Jira Align and other Atlassian tools combined together with others. This is a true system of work example because you can take the data from Jira Align, combine it with data from Jira, for example. You can embed it into Confluence, and you can share it with your leaders who, like Josh said, don't care about using tools. So the fewer tools they need to use, the better. And that's a perfect example of how the system of work, bringing different tools together, can help you achieve that. It's really putting the enterprise into enterprise insights. And as we're talking about enterprise needs, I think there's one thing that needs to be addressed as well. So it's not just the data, it's how we do the work, right? And so what we have experienced on the Jira Align team for the last couple of years is that we started our journey in agility. So did a lot of our customers. But that journey did not necessarily go into what we would now call agility. Some teams are hybrid, and hopefully you had a chance to listen to a few presentations here at the conference about hybrid ways of working. Some teams will never be agile. And that's OK, because waterfalls are beautiful. But that is also why in Jira Align we're dedicated to help you build regardless of how you do your work. And so a lot of capabilities that we're investing in are supporting your ways of working regardless of what they are. For example, custom work hierarchies allows you to create structures according to your needs that don't need to follow any specific way of working, and then leverage it to get data with the right slicing and the right granularity for your organization. So hopefully that, in addition to empowering your teams, because they still need to work together in ways and tools that make sense for them, things like this add more flexibility and provide more value to leaders, because you need to connect all of the dots, as we talked about before. So the sad thing, or maybe the inspirational thing, is that once you have empowered your teams, once you have connected all the dots, that is still not enough. There's something else standing in the way. And that's right. As leaders, you need to make better decisions, and you need to make them faster. So we have explored enough leadership struggles today, right? Not yet. Buckle up. So Oracle recently did a decision dilemma study. And so what they've discovered that recently leaders have been tasked with making a lot more decisions, and under pressure, and with the expectations to get them done faster. And not just this, but the number of leaders feeling absolutely paralyzed by the volume of data they have to deal with is growing. Because more data does not mean better decisions, does not mean faster decisions. This stat may make me really sad. Our own data shows that over 70% of the organizations are still using spreadsheets to get the latest data to make decisions. It's no wonder that strategic decisions can take on average over 20 days, according to a study by Alteryx Inc., data science company. It's crazy. It takes 20 days to make a decision that may change the course for your company. It means, again, it's a waste of time and waste of money, and it's also challenging the leaders to not be as effective and as efficient, and not to be able to unleash their true potential. So, meet my new friend, a data-induced imposter syndrome. Raise your hand if you ever experienced the data-induced imposter syndrome. All right, now I'm seeing a few hands. people are being honest. Thank you for that. If you think you don't have the data-induced imposter syndrome, let me share a few symptoms that you might recognize. Symptom number 1 is making career-defining decisions based on gut. Symptom number 2 is waiting for days and weeks to get the data that you need shaped into something useful. All right, thank you for your honesty. Symptom number 3, figuring out what to do without certainty whether you have the right data or not, and ultimately making up strategic goals. No, I will not admit this. Yeah, it sounds gloomy, right? But there is hope. Our customers are actually already solving this problem, and I would love for you to hear about how, because there are some inspirational stories that we can draw from. So let's talk about a brave and innovative Jira Align customer that found a way. So hopefully you had a chance to attend this session as well. If yes, then you know the story I'm going to talk about. Northwestern Mutual had their CIO tell them that they wanted data-driven insights to see how their investment strategy aligned to their goals. Easier said than done. And just like with the Apollo program, failure was not an option. So they built a sophisticated portfolio management tool that they called Portfolio Hub. And they took data from various tools, from Jira, from Jira Align, from their financial data tooling, as well as HR tooling. They connected it all together for the data visualization layer, and it all worked. Well, are you on your way to build your own Portfolio Hub? Well, you don't have to, because we recognize that the story of Northwestern Mutual is very, very common, and that you, as leaders, have to have that flexibility, have to have strategic level reporting that helps you make better decisions. And there's good news. We are working on exactly that. So we believe that leaders should have the data they need when they need it. And that belief is driving our next big investment in enterprise agility and making that investment for the leaders. So I would like to talk about other set of new capabilities in Jira Align that will help you with this. But first, I want you to meet someone else. Yet again, another guest. Let's meet Andrea. Andrea is the CIO of Prosphere 5 Investments, and she is the executive leader that Olivia, our old friend, works with and supports. So what does Andrea need in her role? I have to say that her role and her needs are not defined by the I in her title, because like most executives, she actually needs to understand her goals and where the progress is towards her goal, whether she needs to step in, whether there are any blockers that require her attention, and what basically needs to happen. How does she manage her teams to achieve the desired outcomes? So here's how the new capabilities in Jira Align can support her. First, she can see the dashboard that is tailored to her needs and her goals and all the data that she needs to support her strategic decision-making and help her understand the program that is driven within her organization that she cares about the most. And she can set the scope of this as far wide or as narrow as she prefers. It's fully customized to what she cares about. More importantly, Andrea can see whether the progress is delayed and what are the risks that she's facing. Now she sees that the MRR program that Olivia has been driving is off track. And you may argue, well, this is a CIO. Why would they care about MRR? Well, guess what? The best CIOs care about the business, and so does Andrea. And so she wants to dive in to understand how her organization can connect and can help with this initiative being off track. So Andrea wants to learn what is going on and how exactly she can step in. And it will take a lot of time to even get to understand this progress, talk to 10 people or maybe more. But now, thanks to Atlassian Intelligence, she doesn't have to, because she can quickly summarize all the information about work happening in different tools and all the updates around strategic programs that she's interested in, and quickly connect it together. To her surprise and dismay, the blockers that are actually preventing this work from happening are within her own organization. But remember, Andrea is a leader, and so she wants to act, and act she will, because she has a theory how she can reallocate resources within her teams to faster support building of the new infrastructure that will help unblock the MRR initiative and help the business. So to validate that, she delegates, because that's what good leaders do, to Olivia to see how different pieces of the puzzle fit together. And Olivia can work with various insights across people, work, money, and goals to build out some scenario planning and validate the recommendation that Andrea is about to make on reallocating strategic resources and making things happen. So now, we can look at different scenarios, whether they're optimistic or pessimistic, compare how they stack up against other strategic priorities that Andrea's organization is supporting, and help Andrea make a good decision faster. So, it's important to support leaders. It's important to overcome the data-driven imposter syndrome. It's important to say goodbye to it. And today, before I say goodbye to you, I would like to remember how Atlassian is going to help you, the leaders in the room and the leaders listening to us online, to help better decisions, to help make better decisions, and to achieve improvements in your enterprise strategy and planning. So first, I've asked you a question about whether you have the full picture of connecting strategy to work that your teams are doing. And that's how we're going to connect the dots. Today, you've learned that you can already connect your strategy to execution in Jira Align with the OKR Hub. And soon, thanks to the new Jira Align capabilities, you will be able to connect work, people, and money in the context of goals and time, using data in both first and third-party tools. Second, we talked about the level of confidence that you have in the work that your teams are doing and whether that confidence level is actually there. So now we can help you make sure that your teams are empowered and have the right context through the Atlassian system of work that, remember, goals are now incorporated in Atlassian tools everywhere so that you can share that context and visibility with your teams as well. But then in Jira Align, you can help consolidate all of the strategic priorities and roll-up work so that as leaders, you can build a house that has a roof. And that is how Jira Align is going to be the roof of the house of the Atlassian system of work. And my final question was, do you have the data that you need to make decisions as leaders? And the good news is, yes, we're going to help you with that. We're going to help you connect the data about people, work, and money, or the context of goals and time, so that you as leaders not only have the data, but the relevant data, relevant insights at the right level of altitude and at the right time. Because who we are is changing. You know us for being enterprise agility, and you know us for helping connect strategy to execution and evolve your ways of working. But where we're going, our new North Star, is enterprise strategy and planning, with the new capabilities to connect people, work, and money, or the context of goals and time. I will say this once again. Hopefully you remember. And to get you, the leaders and executives, the data and the powers you need in order to help your organizations and your businesses flourish, in order to make better strategic decisions. Thank you. Have a great rest of your Team 24.